guest today on the Kick Your Boots Up podcast is the sixth generation cowgirl from Arizona, Mackenzie Kimbro. Kenzie, it's been so good getting to know your story over the years. And we actually got to have a fun kind of opportunity back in 2020 when the NFR came. You have your own show, Roots Run Deep, and I got to be a guest on your show. So now, of course, by default, and because I love you, I want you to be on this show as well. And I get to take turns with you, interviewing you and getting to know your story. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here. And I just can't wait to let everyone know how cool you are.
Oh my gosh, Taylor, thank you so much for having me here. Like you said, we're good friends, and I got to interview you a while back, and really excited to kind of switch roles today and see what you have up your sleeve to ask me.
Well, hopefully it won't be anything too challenging. Hopefully this will be fun.
Oh,
But
it will be for sure.
I do want to get started with getting to know more about your background and more so what it was like growing up on a ranch, because there's people that live on ranches, and then there's you document most of every day. And I was just telling our friends off the screen here that you are one of the very few that actually go with the ranch hands and help push the cattle through the desert. And that is so inspiring. So tell us about what it was like growing up in your background and what it's like living on a ranch, growing up on a ranch.
Oh, definitely. It's been such a blessing, and it's really molded the way that I live my entire life. As you mentioned, I'm a sixth generation cattle rancher, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to work with my family on a daily basis. We have 3 ranches in southern Arizona. We're in a very diverse borderlands region, and the landscape here, all the way down to the way that we run our cattle, is very unique. And it's really cool to be able to document that, as you said, with camera crews or with my phone, just sharing it on Instagram and Facebook, and kind of be able to share our Southwestern lifestyle with everybody else around the country. Growing up on the ranch was definitely challenging, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's also one of the most rewarding careers. And I always say I'm doing God's work and working his landscape and raising his animals and taking care of it for the next generation. And for now, I'm proud to be the next generation.
Oh yeah, and it's no secret he's using you for good, and you're getting to kind of be the vessel to showcase with the rest of the world what life is like. And one thing I admire about you is I remember a long time ago, it probably was a few summers ago in particular, that you were pushing cattle through. I think switching pastures. I'm not really sure, but you had gone MIA for a little bit, and everyone was kind of like, "Where's Mackenzie? She's somewhere in the desert." And then you came back on, and you looked like you had been, in a desert with cattle. You weren't trying to put on makeup and make it look like a good glamorous lifestyle. You had chapped lips, and you talk about how bad the wind was. I appreciate that you keep things real. And what's it like, living the real lifestyle?
Well, I appreciate that, Taylor, because, a lot of us that have a career on social media and sharing our lives there, it's really hard to be vulnerable and come on not looking 100% presentable every day. But like you said, that's part of the ranching lifestyle. And that's something that is important to me, is keeping it really authentic, because literally one day we'll be working cattle and we'll be out in the elements and the wind. And I wear makeup on cattle drive days some days, just because I feel like if you look good, you feel good and you do good. But definitely spending that much time out in the sun and working in the elements and driving cattle through the mountains or rotating pastures is very challenging, especially with the Arizona weather. It can change on a dime. So we are joking usually about wearing layers, and we're layering even in the summer. You might start with a wild rag that morning and be wishing you had a pool to jump into by the end of the day. So yeah, that's an interesting part of it for sure. But the other side of that I just want to touch on real quick, what I share a lot of is the way that we ranch here. And as I said earlier, it's very different than some parts of the country, mostly because of the landscape and how our terrain is set up and things like that. What I usually am sharing when we're driving cattle for long days and long hauls, some of our ranches are up in the mountains and some are down in more of a volcanic area. And so very different forages, very different pasture rotation management practices. And all of those things kind of have to work together for a healthy landscape. And of course, at the end of the day, that's our goal as ranchers, is of course to take care of our cattle and raise healthy beef, but also to take care of a working landscape. So a lot of those images and videos and stuff that I get to share are us rotating pastures with our cattle, or working on improvements, building fences, improving water pipelines so that there's water all over the country and we can really utilize every bit of the country that we can. And our cattle are happy with that. So it seems like we're doing something right.
Oh, you definitely are. And I really appreciate that you share with the rest of the world your journey along the way. But I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I want to back up just a little bit. You mentioned about being a sixth generation cattle rancher and cowgirl also. But the family aspect is really important for that. Obviously, if they wouldn't have made their way here and established, you wouldn't be where you are today. And I remember one moment in particular, I got to jump into the truck with you and your mom and a few of the other camera crew people for your show back in Texas whenever we were filming for your show. And I just was so in awe of your mom and you and your mom's relationship. You guys work so well together. So let's back it up and talk about the family aspect. Tell us about your family, how they work together, what it's like, with doing it every single day with them and just all the elements of that.
Yeah. So mom and I have a very unique relationship, and I'm very lucky in that aspect. Backing up even further, my family arrived in Arizona from Texas in 1896 and homesteaded here. So our family has really deep roots in Arizona and in ranching. We've been ranching in every generation. And that is something that was actually instilled in me from a young age, kind of an appreciation for that, because growing up in this lifestyle, like I mentioned earlier, not for the faint of heart. And it's something that if you look at it with the right lens and you really pay attention to the importance of what we're doing with our work, but also what we're doing to continue this legacy for the next generation, it's something that I take to heart deeply. And so on a daily basis, I get to work with my grandpa, Warner Glenn, and my mom, Kelly Glenn Kimbro. And between the three of us, we are going and blowing all the time. And people are always saying, you guys are kind of hard to keep up with. And I would agree that we are, but we definitely can't do it without each other. We are very blessed that we get along well. We don't fight much. And I think that really just comes down to a mutual respect for each other. And also, we just don't have much time to fight. So,
That's true. There's really no
so we
time
just
for
don't
that.
let that get in the way. Yeah. But being able to work with them on a daily basis is such a blessing. And I will say that until I am blue in the face, because it's an opportunity that I sure don't take for granted.
Good for you. I can tell you're so genuine about that. And that's why I really respect you a lot. And kind of moving on to my next set of questions, it's got to be really cool and humbling at the same time to think about your next, once your grandpa moves on, and of course your mom will get older, I mean, many, many, many years from now, of course. It's got to be kind of a cool feeling knowing that you're the next generation. It's up to you to live on the ranch and family name. But now that I'm talking through it, you probably have a lot of pressure too.
Oh, I would say so. Yeah. I think that's something that you almost have to take in stride at this point, because I have chosen to be the next generation and it's my life goal to stay here. And of course, something that we'll talk about in a little bit is kind of diversifying what I get to do with my career and the different ways that I can kind of dive into a bunch of different passions. But in the short term, of course, we're all working together, and that's great. I actually gave up a few really good Ivy League offers after high school to go to college because I knew that ranching was going to be what I would do. No matter what else I decided to go into, ranching was always going to be the basis for it. And so I figured I should learn as much as I can from my grandpa and my mom while I have them and while I have such a unique opportunity to work with them every day. And even just conversations, we all usually get together at the dinner table every night, and just hearing the conversations of what happened in each of our days, if we were in separate places, or just kind of recapping what's ahead this coming week or things like that, is what helps kind of keep me grounded in knowing that hopefully I'll be able to be successful. And many, many years from now, as you said, when things change and I'm the leader of the dynamic, then I'll just have to be able to rest on knowing that I've learned as much as I can from the generations before me, and I hope that I can make them proud.
And you will, I have no doubt. So no pressure there. The
No,
future is
no,
in
no
very good
pressure at
hands.
all.
And kind of moving on to that, I mentioned earlier that it's nice following along and getting to see you in the day-to-day life, but let's break down a normal day. I know it's starting calving season now. You're going to be doing branding soon in the spring, moving on to summer. So talk about like a normal day in your life, because your life really isn't normal.
No, I would say it's not normal whatsoever. And I think that's what makes it so special and so unique. It's something that not a lot of people get to experience necessarily, but when people ask about it, I'm like, you know what? It's a whirlwind and we're exhausted 99% of the time. But at the end of the day, there's such a fulfillment in what we're doing also. So walking through a normal day is kind of something that I don't I don't necessarily have a great answer for it. Every single day is different here. And literally, we have big calendars laid out on the tables in the office that we have to go through a couple times a week between mom and I and my grandpa Warner, because one day we will literally all be writing and gathering and, branding as calving season's coming up. And then we'll be branding. In the fall, we have fall works. So, like I mentioned, we have 3 ranches, and the dynamic on those is a little bit different of the time of year that we can run things. So, one day we might be working cows, one day we'll be putting in new fences or fixing a busted pipeline somewhere. And the next day I might be having an opportunity like this where I get to have a meeting with you. We've also hosted a lot of people through the years, which is kind of a cool deal. Our family's always been really known for hospitality. So the uniqueness of the valley that we ranch in has brought a lot of visitors, whether it be people looking at conservation practices in ranching or people looking for wildlife diversity and how that all coexists in a working landscape, whether it be a little bit of politics because we do live on the border, things like that. We've always been known for hosting. And so that might be one day we might be cooking lunch for 60 people. And the next day we might be working cows. And the day after that, fixing broken fences and pipelines. And it's never a dull moment, that's for sure. I am perpetually behind on office work. Like anybody that works with me knows, if you don't hear back from me in an email within 24 hours, give me a minute because I promise I will get back to you. But definitely cool to see how diverse just a week schedule can be. It's never the same day in the life, that's for sure.
And that keeps it exciting and interesting and fresh and new. I feel like, and you really can't plan for the things that happen on your day to day. Like if a fence breaks, busts, or, you mentioned a pipe busting, it's just all different. Right. And so that kind of makes it, I guess, harder and easier at the same time to be a control freak, but also not, you kind of have to just let the good Lord take care of you in moments like that. And that's what I find really encouraging about your roll off the shoulders mentality. That's really inspiring. So let's kind of talk about, I mentioned a little bit about the harder parts when things go wrong, but what are the hardest parts of the ranch life that you live? Obviously, it's been modernized to today's time, but there's got to be some challenges that you face. So what are those?
Well, it kind of honestly, that even kind of depends on the day. I would say personally, the biggest challenges for me are looking at improvement projects. So those waters and fence lines and trying to kind of map out best ways to make them better. Because a lot of them have been in place for many years now. And on one of the ranches that actually just came back into our family, it was originally homesteaded by some of ours and then left the family for a while and just came back in. It definitely needed some big improvements. And I'm very fortunate that my mom took that in stride. And that has been like her baby project. But the biggest challenges of that is just figuring out the literal logistics of it all. Like you mentioned, having that let it roll off your back mentality and kind of go with the flow and hope for the best and pray about it if it all falls apart is crucial in literally every aspect of what we do. I think the other kind of cliche, but honestly, most challenging part of ranching in general is just dealing with the weather because you're raising cattle and you're working with nature and hopefully you're working with it and not against it. So
Yes.
in times of drought, we're here in Arizona. Drought can be 6 months, drought can be 10 years. You don't know. And you just have to be able to, like I said, roll with it and adapt and lean on your resources and kind of know what past generations before you have done to get through. And like you mentioned, lean on those newer technologies and better feed supplements and asking your neighbors and going into forums provided by NCBA and the beef councils to try to learn as much as you can and handle those situations to the best of your ability. And like I said, pray about it and kind of hope for the best.
And definitely, and a lot of people are starting to see that, I guess, in the new series of shows, Yellowstone. But I feel like you live it every single day. And while it's much different than Montana, I'm getting the serious vibes of when it's time to move cattle to different pastures. And you're afraid of overgrazing, and maybe there is a disease. And so, talk to us a little bit about the cattle drives in particular and what it takes to get there from one pasture to another, because it's around your area. It's not just an easy task.
Definitely not. As I said earlier, we live in one of the most ecologically diverse regions in the world, actually. And that's kind of that's like my fun fact when I go to introduce myself somewhere, especially in the ranching industry. And that, I mean, that provides its own unique set of challenges. The terrain itself can be really hard to navigate. And honestly, finding good help, that our neighbors help each other a lot and we all kind of day work for each other, but trying to bring in cowboys to help with those bigger days for the cattle drives and for moving pastures and gathering in the fall and trying to make sure we don't leave anything behind. And then also gathering in the spring, making sure we don't leave a baby calf somewhere and take its mama to a whole other pasture, things like that. It's a little bit tricky down here just because the terrain's so diverse. We have flatlands all the way through volcanic activity, so really rocky country. You've got to
Wow.
have good rock-footed horses and kind of mountain rimmed mules. We ride mules quite a bit around here just because of their ability to navigate the country and go where the cattle go. And sometimes you're scaling a mountain and it gets a little hairy, but you know that a mule's going to take care of itself. So you just got
Wow.
to trust them, and that's part of the process. But it'll go all the way up to mountain country and really rugged pieces. And in the winter, things freeze and boulders break, and it's a little bit dangerous. But uh, just kind of growing up here and learning how to navigate this piece of the country is really important. And that's something that I don't take for granted. And it's something that's kind of reiterated every time that we have some of the college rodeo guys out to help us gather or whatever. We usually don't let them ride their expensive arena horses out here because we definitely don't want to cripple something. But to hear guys from all over the country say, "Man, this is some tough country to work in." It definitely is, and it's something that makes it unique and challenging, but it's also beautiful, and it's good cow country when we get good rain. So I'll take it.
I have so many questions about that, and we're unfortunately going to run out of time if I ask them all. But I really am intrigued by the mules, and then I also think too it's a great, really good practice for the college rodeo guys too to come out and get the real world cowboy experience and get away from classes too. So that's awesome what you guys have going on there. But one thing that I feel like that I keep every time I think of you, I think of this one picture in particular that I saw a few years ago that kind of sets the bar for your style and talks is going to help us talk through the next questions that I have for you. I remember in particular, you're posing by a cattle loading chute, and you're in, a Western top and jeans or, cute, trendy, and then you have high heels. And to me, that is just such an iconic look for you because that represents that you can dress up and go to the city, but you also still live it every day too.
For sure. And I know exactly which picture you're thinking of because that's one of my favorites for the many
Oh.
years that I've been doing this. So, quick backstory, about 7 years ago, I got started completely by accident into the Western fashion influencing community. I was serving as a state and national beef ambassador on behalf of the beef councils and NCBA and ANCW. And through that, I had to start a blog. That's when blogging was still a big deal, and started talking about beef and sharing our ranch story. Completely accidentally fell into the fashion side of things and got started doing photo shoots and working with brands and really growing a community online through social media. And so a big part of what I do is roots run deep, and that's important to me. And of course, continuing legacies and sharing stories of how we do things in the Southwest. But the other side of what I do is a grit and glam concept, and that's pretty important to me also. I come from a long line of really tough ranch women. I have paintings all over the wall behind me of cowgirls, and the way that the cowgirl's been depicted over the last couple hundred years is she's tough, but she knows how to dress up and go to town also. And so I really embrace that, and I think that's really fun because I fully and firmly believe just because you want to wear high heels one day does not mean that you can't wear jeans and boots and get down and dirty with the rest of them the next or the same day. Some days it's the same day. I have definitely been in the branding pen and had to clean up for an event one night. So really embracing that grit and glam concept, super important to me. And I like to kind of share that also. And when I'm trying to empower other women in how they want to dress, if they think they're too tomboy to look nice, then kind of show them options for that. And if they think they're too city to work on a ranch or really try to, get right in there with the men, I'll help them feel confident in that too.
I cannot agree more. You do that so well. What a class act you are when it comes to fashion because you kind of lead the way and you're not afraid to be yourself. A lot of girls, I feel like, get in their head a little bit, but you are so free and you'll do try-ons whenever you go shopping and you'll do the different, you can dress it up, dress it down. I love that you give several different looks for maybe a staple piece. And then the same thing is wild rags. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of them. You dress them up so well. So what are some things that you notice right now that are becoming trends that you're really into? And what are some of the fashion things that you see maybe even becoming a thing in the future too?
Oh, well, first off, thank you very much. That was a very kind compliment. I sure appreciate all of the love that you have given me through the years. You've seen me come from the RFD TV days all the way through, and now with everything that either of us is doing, you've seen a lot of my style through the years.
Aw, yes.
um,
And they have changed, let me tell you, all the styles across the board, like the headbands. I used to do the whole headband thing.
yep, I think we all fell a victim to the headband trend at one point. Kind of glad
Yes.
that one's behind us. But talking just a little bit about some of the trends that I've seen, especially in the last year and in the last couple months, even during last year and into the fall, we saw cowboy culture, of course, taking over mainstream America. And I give large part credit to that to Yellowstone for kind of bringing that back to the forefront and showing a dramatized but romanticized version of what we all do. And honestly, fashion trends and fashion brands and designers have always had a respect, I think, for the cowboy lifestyle. I think there's always been a little touch here and there, especially with some designers more than others. Ralph Lauren is always a good example of that. But the last year, last couple months, and even headed into spring, some of those elements are really taking over mainstream fashion. And I think it's neat to see the consumer base of shoppers really gravitate back towards Western brands to kind of source those looks. So, cowboy boots, of course, are always in trend for those of us in the Western industry, but they're taking over. I was just looking at some stuff before we hopped on here from New York Fashion Week, which was just here recently, and cowboy boots were all over the streets of New York still. So, that trend in mainstream fashion is not going anywhere anytime soon. I am also kind of liking Western and mainstream fashion are embracing wild rags and silk scarves a little bit more through seasons. Of course, traditionally on the ranch and in the cowboy lifestyle, we're going to wear them for functionality. And the
Of
dressiest
course.
we may get with them is, I don't know, tying a buckaroo knot instead of a square knot. But seeing the different ways that we can style those from ranch to runway, honestly, there's people styling them by tying them on their handbags, taking them into spring that way. Maybe the lighter weight chiffon type materials being worn as accents to an outfit. So still bringing in those touches of our lifestyle and just styling them a little bit differently. I've also seen a lot of cowboy hats. Some we're working on it. Some are not shaped as those of us in the Western industry would prefer. But you know what?
Thank you. Say it louder for the people in the back.
For the people in the back. Yeah, the people wearing them backwards and the people who don't have them shaped quite right, we'll work on it. But honestly, I say this a lot when I have these conversations with people in the Western industry that may not be fully embracing the fact that contemporary fashion has tried to bring in some of those elements and maybe just aren't educated enough about them to do them justice. I say this is an opportunity for those of us in the Western industry who know better to start a conversation. That is your foot in the door to advocate for the industry, to tell your own story of agriculture, of ranching, to really have some kind of a common ground with these people. And they're interested in hearing what we have to say. Obviously, they like the look of our cowboy culture, but let's tell them a little bit about it so that they can have a respect for it too.
Oh, yes. I'm so thankful you brought that up and just encourage them along the way because the only way the Western lifestyle is going to continue on getting the love and the support that it needs is by being an advocate and speaking the truth and involving and being inclusive. So could not have said it better myself. That's so awesome. And I'm going to kind of speed things up a little bit. So throughout the seasons, a pair of cowboy boots you mentioned are a staple item. How would you go from wearing the same pair of boots, whether that be summer, spring, fall, winter, all throughout the season? So what's something you would do?
Oh gosh, this is something that I have tried to hone my craft on the last couple of years because I own way too many cowboy boots by most people's standards, and I'm unapologetic about that. I love
Hey,
them
we
all.
won't judge you for that one. We're here
Oh,
for it.
definitely not. Justin takes up a pretty solid section of it, that's for sure. But honestly, styling them from through seasons is not as hard as people think. I think overlooking even the simplest stylings is where we kind of fall short usually. Of course, you can go classic and wear them with a good stacked pair of jeans. That's important. Getting an inseam that's long enough so that you have a little bit of a stack on them. That'll go through all seasons and, of course, is versatile and functional. But then if you go more towards the fashion side of things, a trend that we're seeing a lot is kind of an exaggerated cuff of our jeans. So especially on a
Mhm.
straight leg style, that gives you an option that's not tucking your boots into your jeans, but still allowing for a little bit of that more artistic boot top to show. And I think that's a really cute option, especially headed into spring. Summer, Summer dresses, I am here for styling those with tall boots, especially one of the most flattering fits is the taller the top, the prettier the whole silhouette is.
Yeah.
Also here for a good pair of booties, but if we're looking at the exact same style of boots throughout the year, cuffing the jeans gives you an option, able to kind of dress it up and edge it up a little for street style. Tucking your jeans into your boots, never something I'm going to frown on. I love the way that looks with like an oversized blazer and maybe a poncho belt headed into fall. And then winter, just layering them up. And also a classic thing that I think brands like Double D Ranch and Cowboys and Indians has shown this a lot through the years. Those bigger kind of velvet broom skirts that are a little bit longer, but maybe for those
Yes.
of us that are tall, don't quite touch the ground. That's an ideal situation to wear the same pair of cowboy boots, have them peeking out from the bottom so that you have that cowboy classy style, and you can carry it all the way throughout the year.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. As a tall girl myself, I'm like, yes, that's a staple for everyone. So,
Mhm.
unfortunately, we're out of time for today, but I still want everyone to have the opportunity to learn more about you and to get to see what I'm talking about, to get to see you live your everyday lifestyle and to continue on to support you and watch you and learn what you do. So, where can we find you? Tell us about your website, social medias. We just want to support you in the best way we can.
Oh gosh, Taylor, I so appreciate you guys having me on the podcast today. If people want to follow along and reach out and be part of the community, I am on Instagram more than anything. My handle is Kenzie, KenziegK. I'm also on Facebook, Roots Run Deep, Mackenzie Kimbro. And then my website is rootsrundeepaz.com. You can find all kinds of stuff on both of the social pages and then also on the website. And as you mentioned, the TV show that we've been filming the last couple of years, specifically during the NFR, all of those episodes are on my website and on my Instagram page. So if you guys can't find something or if you have questions or whatever, just don't be afraid to reach out because I'm an open book and I appreciate y'all for being there.
You are an open book and you always include everyone and you always start with, hey, friends. And I love that. I love that you immediately make people that follow you feel like they're in your friend circle, your friend group, your family. And over time, like us, you do become actual real friends in real life. So very good. Continue doing everything that you do for the industry. Very thankful that you took the time out of your busy day to be on here and keep doing you, girl. This is awesome. And keep sharing your light with the rest of the world.
Oh, Taylor, thank you so much. That means the world to me. And it's been an honor to be part of this.